Have you ever wondered what it takes to be a helicopter pilot in the Navy? Today, I'm talking with Julie Vida, who is a retired Navy helicopter pilot and commander, now leading the growth team at a government contracting company. Her company supports the federal government and the Department of Defense in particular by delivering technology and engineering systems they need to execute their missions. This is a special show as Julie is joining us on the Books That Build Skills show during our middle grade March reading challenge. I am putting extra attention on the characters in the books and the storylines so that you see how books support you as a teenager when you're making the important life decisions as to what path to take in life. You wrote the foreword to book 5,
Yes.
Calculated Risk,
Yes.
which feels like the perfect title for someone who flew helicopters in the Navy.
Yes.
And I did not plan that. I swear I didn't, but it worked out so well.
Yes.
Can you tell us about your role as a Navy helicopter pilot and the kind of missions you flew? Like, what kind of calculated risk did you take in real life?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to speak with you and to be in front of your listening audience out there. I'm very excited. I served 24 years in the Navy. And of that 24 years, I did a couple different things. And flying helicopters was about half of that time. So with other training and schools and other, I drove ships for a while. That's why out of 24 years, I only flew for about 12. But of that 12, I deployed off of ships, small ships, aircraft carriers, land, um, was deployed when 9/11 happened, got to see a lot of really interesting things I never thought I would see, and got to do things I never thought I would do. And I did not grow up wanting to be a pilot. The opportunity opened for me to go to flight school kind of early in my Navy career. And I said, yes, I'll do that. Why would that sounds fun. Let's go do that. So the kind of flying that I did in the Navy as a helicopter pilot, actually, it had a pretty wide range. So I started out as a supply helicopter, let's say. When you think of Navy ships and they go out to sea for months at a time, they're out on the ocean and they need to get supplies. They need food and fresh fruits and vegetables, frozen stuff, mail from home, care packages, cookies. We used to say toilet paper and cheesy puffs. And we would carry those items from the supply ship that would go in and out of port and pick up supplies. And those big, big kind of tanker looking ships that you see out at sea. Helicopters would land on those ships, and they would externally hook up the load underneath the helicopter, and we would fly with it over to the small ship or over to the aircraft carrier. And so that was actually kind of a fun mission because you were bringing stuff that people needed. And we generally did that in the daytime, which is a lot less dangerous and a lot less scary than flying at night. So that was one mission. Another mission was search and rescue. Search and rescue is what you see, when people have accidents, there's an aircraft crash and maybe the pilots punch out and they're in their parachutes and they come down to the ocean. Well, somebody has to pick them up, and it's generally helicopter pilots. So we would have a swimmer in the back, a person dressed up in like swim gear with flippers and a mask and everything. And we would hover down low over whoever was in the water surviving. And our swimmer would jump out and go bring the person up on a hoist. Maybe you've seen it at the end of like Apollo 13, where they rescue the astronaut. That's search and rescue. Add another letter to that, it becomes combat search and rescue, CSAR, we call it. And that was where we would practice to go find wounded or lost warriors, who had gotten behind enemy lines or who had a crash and they needed to be rescued. So we would train for that. I never had to do that for real life, which I'm really grateful for. But that was an exciting mission. And then the last one, actually two others, we would hunt submarines. So we would drop a sonar from the bottom of the helicopter and listen for the ping. We would ping and listen for the echo of a submarine. And we also could shoot Hellfire missiles off the side of the helicopter if there was bad guys out in fast patrol boats or doing bad things on the high seas. So that's like the range of missions. It was pretty broad. It was a lot of fun. You asked about calculated risks. Every flight is a huge calculated risk. It is we would brief ahead of time, and everybody would talk about, had they slept? Had they eaten? Were they taking any medication? Did they have things going on at home? Were they trained? Did they have the right training qualifications to be on the flight? We would look at the helicopter and was all the maintenance good? And you've seen this happen when you fly commercially, where the pilots might say, "Oh, sorry, folks, we have to sit here on the tarmac. A light burned out." Well, in a helicopter at night, if any light burns out, you can't fly it because it might mean you don't get a warning or something. So every flight was a risk, but we would balance, and as officers, as the pilots, we had the right to say, "This is too much risk. We are not going to fly." Or, "Yes, there's risk, but we can manage that because we have other people in the cockpit to help that person," or, "We'll be drinking water throughout the flight and we're not going to get that thirsty," that kind of thing. But it was every single flight, every single day, Loxley.
Oh, I can imagine. And you're also your adrenaline's so high because of what you're doing
That's right.
that
That's right.
that's a calculated risk too.
That's right. But that's where, and this is a good theme, is where it's a crew. It's not just one person, not in a helicopter. Some jet aircraft have single pilot. They have one pilot, like, well, you've seen the movies, but in a helicopter, at least in the Navy, you have two pilots and often you have two or three air crewmen in the back to help. So there's trust, and you learn to rely on the other people to ask questions or raise an issue if something doesn't seem right. And that by itself is a way to mitigate risk. And that's not just in the helicopter, that's in life. Rely on people that are around you to help you from keep you from making bad decisions or accepting risk that you shouldn't accept.
And that segues perfectly to the next question, which is one of the reasons why I wrote the terms books is to show the story behind the skills and how people like you end up in high stakes, incredible careers. So looking back, which high school classes, especially in the STEM sector, which prepared you the most for your work in the Navy and how did you actually use that knowledge on the job?
I love that question because I don't often think about when I was in school. Although when I do think about that, I recall often wondering, why am I learning this? Why do I need to learn the Pythagorean theorem? Or why do I need to learn about geography? Well, all of that stuff actually turned out to help me. I'm a liberal arts person. I like English and history and writing. I did not really enjoy math and science, and I wasn't particularly good at it. I'm not really sure why, just a preference, but I was a decent student. So by the time I ended up flying or being in the Navy, I realized all of that knowledge was still back there in my head, and it came out. In some classes in particular, geography, because you wouldn't believe how much you need geography when you're flying and it's daytime and you're flying visually, you're not using instruments, and you need to orient yourself, like, which way is the sun going to come up and go down. um, we would, if we needed to fly to get nighttime, you have to fly so many hours at night every month to make you legal to fly at night. Otherwise, you have to go do some training, so you don't, crash or anything. Well, we would use the sun to determine, let's fly west because then the sun will be out longer. Because if as you fly west, the sun is still setting. So I learned those kinds of tricks. So that's geography. I would call it geography. Physics is another one. And I realize that's not a middle school subject for most students, maybe for some of the advanced, but physics and the laws of motion. When I was in flight school, this is very technical. Before you even start flying, there's ground school. You have to learn about weather. You have to learn about your own physiology and what happens to you when you get up to high altitude and why you need sleep. And another big element of that is aerodynamics, understanding, how does that plane get off the ground? Haven't you wondered that when you are in a commercial airliner and they go really fast and then eventually you're flying and you're like, what? This is like magic. Well, in a helicopter, it's even crazier. In fact, people say helicopters defy the laws of physics, and the laws of gravity, because it's it's just really wild how helicopters fly. So I realized that my knowledge of physics and the forces that, when you're going really fast and air is flowing over a surface, there are physical forces that help it lift and or not lift. So physics was a really important one. And the third one, and this is not STEM, but was foreign languages. And foreign languages helped me a lot. One, literally because I started out as a linguist in the Navy and I wanted to be a linguist. I was a Russian linguist because I loved Spanish so much when I was in junior high. Had a great teacher, read some great books in Spanish. And so that led me to the Navy in the first place. And so all these things that you learn when you're young, you don't realize how helpful they'll be. But
Yeah.
man, did they come in handy when it was time for me to decide what to do with my life.
In book 1, we meet Addie right after her family moves to Huntsville, Alabama, AKA Rocket City, and her mom is a NASA rocket scientist and her dad works for the FBI, and she is curious about everything, especially transportation on land, sea, and air. So, what advice would you give kids, especially girls, who are trying to figure out what interests them? And I kinda use this analogy sometimes, like, I love arts, I'm the liberal arts person too. But now that I've started a company, I've learned to love math and spreadsheets.
Mhm.
So, there's these different things that you don't realize, but that combination can make for a great career path. So, what is your advice?
I have a couple pieces of advice. And first of all, kind of to your point that you just said, Loxley, like this is not a once and done that you figure out what you want to do and you're stuck with it, the rest of your life.
You know, the 2 of us are the best examples of that because you started in the Navy and you're now working in the private sector. I started in construction and architectural design,
Hmm.
and now here I am writing books and founded a nonprofit for literacy.
Yes. Like, where'd that
2
come
things
from?
that yeah, like, what
Yeah.
kinda crazy path did
Yes.
both of us go through? Yeah.
Yes. So leading back to like what advice or thoughts would I have? And the first one, and it's going to sound hokey, trust your gut. If you are reading a book about something that excites you, or you're reading a book about something that you think should excite you, but it doesn't, listen, like that matters. The idea of doing some kind of job, it either makes you feel like, ugh, or it makes you feel like, I can't wait to do that. Trust that. Trust that. Um, and it doesn't matter what everybody else is doing. It, if all your friends are talking about they want to go into the trades because they think, and they're right, being like a shipbuilder and a welder and all that would be really fun, but maybe that's just not for you, then don't pretend it's for you. That's one, trust your gut. The second thing is try really hard not to compare yourself to other people. I know that's hard, especially when you're in junior high or middle school and you're in high school. I wish I could go back and tell my younger self, please don't worry about what everybody else is doing. But those are life lessons that, you learn along the way. There's a phrase I've heard, and I've actually put it in my book that I hope I'm going to be publishing sometime this year. And that is, comparison is a thief of joy. When we compare ourselves to others, it prevents us from being happy for ourselves. And right now, the Olympics are just about to wrap up. And literally, as I was preparing for this conversation, Loxley, I found myself watching. I love figure skating, and that's my favorite.
Yeah,
Who doesn't want to watch figure skating?
yeah.
And these women and men would come off the ice and they'd be so happy. And they're like crying and they're like, oh my gosh. And they're so excited till they sit on the bench and the scores come up and you watch their face. And as soon as the scores come up and they realize they're comparing themselves, all the joy goes away. Now I understand it's the Olympics. You're there to win. Like you don't go there to not win, but think about that, like just that emotion and how happy people are. And when they start the comparison, it kind of sucks it all away. So I would just encourage your young listeners to please try not to do that. Other people have their own path and you have yours too. So don't compare yourself and trust your gut. And they sound like that's not hard, like no kidding, but it can be really hard to put that into practice in real life.
It really can. So I'm glad you brought up those 2 points because I agree with you 100%, especially on the comparison part. So, yes,
Yeah.
yes, pull your pencil and pen out and your piece of paper and write down these notes, okay? Because your now favorite Aunt Julie just gave you 2 great pieces of advice, okay?
I am everyone's favorite aunt. Just ask my one niece.
Yeah,
She'll tell you.
yeah. At the end of book 3, one of our favorite characters, I'm not gonna give it away, crashes an aeronautical prototype during a test flight. So, see, we've already got some of the coolest characters you could ever imagine. I mean, just imagine having that job. Have you ever had that moment where you thought, "Oh, this could go very wrong," while you were flying, and what did you rely on? Was it training, instincts, teamwork to get through it safely?
So, fortunately, in all the years that I was flying, including overseas and off of ships and during 9/11 and all that crazy, we didn't know what was going on with the, global war on terror and all that. Fortunately, I'm very, very fortunate that only 3 times, 3 times did I think, "This is it. Like, we're gonna crash and this is gonna be the end." One of those times was search and rescue mission. We had rescued a sailor who had fallen off a ship at nighttime. Not good. And he was injured, and so we rescued him. We brought him to his ship, and then we were just getting some more gas so we could take him back to the aircraft carrier where they have a full-on hospital, surgery and everything. And it was nighttime. It was very dark. It was on the back of a small ship. The kind of ship is called a cruiser. You can look it up. Very small flight deck. And so there's not a lot of margin of error when a helicopter is sitting there and the rotor's going roundy roundy, like we say. If you make a mistake and go toward the ship, toward the superstructure instead of back when you're taking off the flight deck, it could be a sheer disaster. So I had a young pilot with me. I was the senior pilot. I was in command. I was responsible. But the way the wind was blowing, he was in a better position to do the takeoff because you have to fly into the wind to get off. So I was super nervous. I was like, oh dear God, please let this be okay. And I mean, I trusted him, but he was also young and inexperienced. So long story short, I'm coaching him as we're getting ready to take off and we're adding power. We're adding power so we can lift off the flight deck. And I feel him. I'm doing this because this is how you fly a helicopter. And I feel him go just a little bit forward on the cyclic, meaning we are now headed towards the ship. And there's literally like 8 inches of clearance. And I was just like, oh my God. And so I took control. I overrode his controls. I got us off the flight deck. I did a hard bank left turn, but I couldn't see because I was in the right seat and we were turning left. It was very scary. But all of those things that you mentioned all clicked in. We practice stuff all the time. That was not the first time I landed on a ship. It was not the first time I landed at night, not even close. So I relied on my training in the actual flying of the helicopter, but also training in like emergency procedures because we might have had an emergency if we had gotten off the deck and all of a sudden I'm like, I get vertigo or something. Vertigo is you lose your spatial awareness and you don't know if you're upside down or not. So I started thinking about, well, what happens next? And the other thing was back to trust. I mentioned this earlier there's other crew members in the aircraft and I had to rely on them to tell me, come left, come right. You're too low. You're too high. You're just right. And without that trust in those crewmen in the back, it could have been really horrible. But we built up trust over time. I knew that they wouldn't tell me something that wasn't true or that was going to put us in danger. So that was one of the 3 scariest things, and I'll never forget it. And we had to kind of settle down. We're human beings, so
Yeah.
we didn't just fly right back to the carrier, even though we had a sailor in the back that was injured and really needed to get to the hospital. We knew we needed to kind of calm down and let our heart rate settle again. Otherwise, it would have just been like a spiral of bad things happening. So
Yeah.
thank God that wasn't my day.
Yeah. And, I write some of those types of things into the book too, because you can, if you don't give yourself that chance to pause,
Yes,
you can go to a spiral where it makes it even worse, and you don't want to
that's
do
right.
that.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
So
Um,
after the crash, the books really start to emphasize the importance of having an anchor, someone that you can talk to and you can trust. From book one on, we see that Aunt Loxley plays that role for Addie. Who have been the anchors in your life, whether it's a mentor or a friend or a family member or even a pet
yeah, yeah.
that has helped to keep you grounded?
I love that word anchor. It's also a Navy term. So,
Yeah. I
um,
had to throw it in there because
yeah,
of
of
that.
course, of course. My anchors have changed throughout my life. And, the friends that were my BFFs when I was 13, I have one that I keep in touch with, and I still call her my BFF, even though I don't talk to her for, a year or two at a time. So when I was young, I would say school friends were more of an anchor. I wasn't super close with my mom. My dad, yes, but once I turned 18 and left for the Navy, my anchors became people who were like in my same environment, Navy people, because it was just easy for them to understand. Like at the Naval Academy, there were still not very many women there when I was going there. Maybe 9% of the class was women. So out of a class of 1,000, we had 90 women, something like that. So there were some women there that, and we all like were figuring it out as we went along, but at least we had each other to cry on the shoulder and ask for encouragement. But as I moved on in my career, I realized that, well, one, my spouse is an anchor, and my parents are too, but they don't understand enough about like military or business now. But my spouse is an anchor, and I literally have, well, I have a twin sister who's also retired Navy, so she gets it. And I literally have like two other friends that I go to constantly. Not that I don't have other friends, but there are two go tos for me because they understand my background. They understand why I still have problems with confidence sometimes. They understand what makes me sad. They also hold me accountable. They let me have my pity party for a little minute, and then they say, "All right, so now what are you going to do?" And those kinds of friends are priceless. If you have friends that always tell you how cute you are or how nice you are or oh how smart you are and everything is perfect all the time, there's not a lot of honesty in that. So I my anchors are people who are honest with me and they tell me what I need to hear and not what I want to hear.
You attended the Naval Academy
Yes.
and built this incredible network. And I've noticed this in everything that you do when we're working together. There's this especially strong community of women that you're still connected to decades later. So, what was life like at the academy, and what do you think the secret is for those relationships lasting so long?
What was life like? I mean, I loved it. I will just say I love the discipline. I'm a rule follower. So I cross at the crosswalk. I don't make a turn without turning on my turn signal. That's just like who I am. So I loved the discipline and the marching and the, getting yelled at if you didn't get the answer right or doing the push-ups or I wasn't good at push-ups, but I realized that it was, well, if I did my stuff right, I wouldn't have to do the push-ups. So I really enjoyed that. I like the pace. I'm half Italian. I talk fast. I move fast. I like to kind of keep things going. I like pressure. So it really just fit me. That all that to say, it was a very difficult time when I was there. Women had only been at the academies, the service academies, West Point, Naval Academy, Air Force Academy, Coast Guard, for not even like 14 years, which in the whole expanse of time that the academies have been around is not long. So there was still a lot of discrimination. There was still a lot of not all of it obvious, but there was a lot of, you know, we could tell a lot of the guys just didn't want us there. So that's just not a great feeling all the time when you feel like you're not only working as hard as the rest of your classmates, but harder in a lot of ways and not given the credit, not given, you know, um, not having the same encouragement that our male classmates were. So that's where having female classmates came in handy, where we understood what that glance meant or what that eye roll meant or what it meant when it's in a group of 10 people and two of them are women and the eight guys get picked to do like the fun stuff and the two women get selected to like take notes for everyone. We had shared experiences. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So everyone that's listening is not going to go to a service academy, but wherever you go, you will have a tribe, let's call it, of people who are experiencing things in a similar way as you do. And I would offer that they're probably a good source of comfort, sanity check. Should I really be worried about this? Am I over dramatizing something? The shared experience so that people, they feel what you feel and they experience what you are experiencing and have a better frame of reference for how to help.
And now you work in the private sector for a government contractor.
Mhm.
Here's a tricky question for you. If that job disappeared tomorrow,
Yeah.
what single skill would help you land on your feet and find your next opportunity?
I I think this is a skill. You asked the word about skill. I am a connector of people, and you know this, Loxley. So I just have this innate ability as someone is talking to me. I'm already thinking about who should I connect them with? Who do I know that could solve that problem? Or who do I know that could encourage this person? Or who do I know that I think they would just really get along and laugh and have a good time? It's just a natural thing that I do. And why do I say that that's a skill that would help me find another job and get on my feet? One, because it's happened already a couple times in my life, and two, because it shows that I'm interested in other people. And people, we love it when other people want to hear about us and they know about us and they want to hear our stories. And so when I show that to other people that I'm actually listening to them and oh, Loxley, I heard you. I heard you said that, you were like, in construction and now, and you were really liberal arts. And now you have this nonprofit. Oh, you should talk to so-and-so. You know that I heard you, that I care about you. And that's a really unique thing. And not a lot of people have that, especially in corporate America, I'll say. And so that's the thing that people remember about me. Oh, you are always connecting people and generally it's a good connection. So that's what would save me, Loxley.
Yeah. And I kind of knew that was going to be your answer just because I've known you for 5 years now and you are really great at that. So that is a skill. And that's one of those you need to write down on your notes. Like just
Mhm.
learn how to connect people because
Yeah.
I'm the same way. Like I instantly somebody says something in my brain, I'm going, I know exactly who could solve that problem. And I've got to connect you to this person because of
Yeah.
what.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's an awesome skill to have.
Yes.
Now we're going to dive a little bit deeper into more skills and
Yes.
we're going to get really specific.
Okay.
So I hope you're ready for this, Julie, because
Yes.
folks, every single one of these books, the book itself is focused on a particular skill. So out on the website, if you go to booksthatbuildskills.org, you can download the worksheets that correspond with the book. So, like in book number 2, it's time management. And you're doing, data collection on yourself to figure out how to be better at managing time.
Hmm.
So, let's look at a couple of these and, you know, think about how we adults use these different skills every day, no matter what our job is.
Yes.
And I want to hear your thoughts on how you use them in real life and get you to share a few examples. So, first one, time management. How do you use time management with your job?
I wish I were better at time management. And just about every person I work with would say the exact same thing. Time is a resource that it never changes. We only have so much.
Yeah.
And like we talked about taking care of ourselves and getting enough sleep. If you're sleeping, you know, 10 out of 24 hours, that only leaves 14 hours. And of that 14 hours, you have to, eat and dress and take care of you and get physical exercise and all of that. So let's say the workday ends up only being 9 hours long, although most people, I think, work longer than that. But let's say it's 9 hours. Well, in that 9 hours, there are mandatory meetings. There is reading email, responding to email. There's looking at reports. There might be doing some research. Now it's, well, how do I leverage AI to help me be more efficient? Maybe you have to plan, you have to submit an expense report because you went on travel. There is a never ending list of things to do. I am notorious for keeping lists of I got to do this and I got to do this and I put a star if it's really important and 2 stars if it's really really important. And at the end of the day, I have done almost none of them because managing time is so difficult. Unless you want to be working your your all the hours that you're awake, I would venture most people never get their to-do list done. So the idea is you manage your time by prioritizing the most important things. And that can also be really hard to determine. What does important mean? Does it mean it's important to my boss? Does it mean and it's important to my customer? Does it mean it's important to me? So it's a lifelong skill to at least be aware that you've got to protect your time while also prioritizing the work that your boss or your employer needs you to execute. And all of that is time management. And I don't know if I'll ever be great at it. Like I said, Just last week, I was at an offsite meeting of the senior leaders in the company, like only 20 people. And at lunch one day, I asked them all, how are you all managing your tasks? How some people use to-do lists, some people use AI, some people use calendar reminders, some people, they have something on their watch, an infinite number of ways for people to manage their time. So you may not get it perfect, but you need to be aware that it's limited and you can't forget to take care of yourself while you're doing all these other things for other people in the waking hours that you have available. So those are kind of my thoughts on time management.
We should get your team to download the worksheets and see what
Yes,
they
that's
think.
that's a great idea. That was a great
So
idea.
the next skill is project management. And I know you do a lot with project management with everything that you're doing with your new company. So how do you work that skill into your day to day?
Fortunately for me, I work with a lot of people who are actual certified project managers. And so if I have a big project, that's going to take weeks, it's going to take months, I get a lot of help. It's just not a skill that I have. And I've learned that in order to prioritize the time I have, I should be focusing on things where I'm strong. If it's about communication, if it's about team building, if it's about telling stories to explain concepts to people so that they can understand them, that's all me. If it is pure project management with spreadsheets and Gantt charts and like tools that I don't know how to use, I get help. I just don't try to pretend my way through being successful as project management but it starts with picking the right projects and
Mhm.
prioritizing the ones that have to get done first. And that's about as far as I go with project management, Loxley.
So I did have a guest joke around about the fact she had just found out what a Gantt chart was. And here I am teaching, 12-year-olds about Gantt charts. She's like,
I
I
did
just
not
found out that.
I did not know what a Gantt chart was until I went to graduate school when I was in
Mhm.
my 30s.
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
never heard of it. So you're you're way ahead. You're teaching way
Kids,
ahead of
y'all are gonna be
me.
so much further ahead than
Yes.
all of
Yes.
your peers
Yes.
and adults after you get finished reading these,
That's
because
exactly
you'll look
right.
at your mom and say, "I think we need to Gantt chart that," and she's gonna look at you and go,
Uh,
"I don't know what you're talking about yet."
that's it. Right.
Okay, so one last one,
Mhm.
um, budgeting for travel, because I know you have to do that,
Yes.
and we actually turned budgeting for travel into a fun little activity in book number 5
Yeah,
when
that's
the girls have
fantastic.
to go out to their big STEM conference.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's It's a big deal. So whether you have to manage your own budget or you are just being responsible for spending wisely, there's only so much money too. Just like there's so much time. A lot of companies, most companies do not have an endless bucket of money to just go fly wherever you want and do whatever you want. So fortunately, the tools are right at your fingertips now. I have become a wizard at trip planning and you know, use your frequent flyer accounts, use your frequent hotel accounts. But back to the prioritization, that still doesn't mean you can take every trip, go every place you want to go. Prioritization. What trips, what travel do I really need to take to get me to my objective? Make my boss happy or deliver to my client or, you know, make the business healthier. And then from there, there's a bunch of decisions to make about, am I going to fly or drive? Are we going to, have people share rooms? Or are we not going to have people share rooms? In fact, when I was flying, one of my jobs when I was flying, I was a flight instructor, and we had all the students who had just come out of flight school would come to our squadron and they would learn how to fly the specific helicopter that they were going to fly. Well, there was there's a certain number of hours they had to fly at night. So this was in San Diego, California. So we had a training site out like an hour out in the desert, a lot of desert around San Diego. And we would, for like a week, we would take 2 helicopters and a bunch of students and fly them out into the desert. And they would do their night flying because there's not a lot of light out there. And when you're trying to fly at night, you need it to be really dark. And it's not really dark when you're near a city. So these trips became like a fun thing. Everybody wanted to go. Oh, I get to be away from home for a week. And, of course, there's a couple places to hang out and socialize out there in the desert. And people really loved it. And then it was my job to find out how are we going to save money on these trips because they were starting to get really expensive. And so I ended up having to be the bad guy and saying, no, you're not going to go for 5 nights. You go for 2 nights, and you'll fly at night on the way out and you'll fly at night on the way back. And now you got extra time. And people did not like that, but it was the smart thing to do. And it was the way to save money and the way to be prudent with the resources that we had. Um, it's never too soon to start learning how to budget money, whether it's your own or somebody else's. In fact, a lot of times at work, we say we need to spend money as if it's our own. And then that keeps us from doing frivolous, things and being extravagant.
You could leave our middle grade March readers with one message about courage, curiosity, or taking risk. What would it be?
I would say when people tell you you're good at something and they're people that you trust and that know you, believe them and build confidence with the skills that other people see in you that you might not see in yourself. So and you might say, oh, it's my parents. They have to tell me I'm good at that. But if it's your parents and a teacher and a friend's parents and a guidance counselor and a stranger, and they're all saying, you are really excellent at, making people smile. That's a silly one. But, if people are telling you that, don't worry about trying to get better at making people smile. Just believe people. And I say that builds confidence because so many times we're down on ourselves and we say, oh, I'm not good at that. Or, oh, yeah. Listen to other people. If you're not going to trust yourself, you will save yourself years of worry about what you're not good at by leaning in on the things that you are good at, because everyone has special skills. And when you learn how to identify those skills that you have and use them to make yourself better, make the world better, it will change your life. Please, please, please listen to other people when they tell you you're good at something and own it and be proud about that. And you'll be confident before you know it.
Well, thank you for being on the show with us, Julie. Everyone, go check out Julie's background on LinkedIn. You can find her there, and I'll have the link below in the description. Her resume is incredible. She is the super connector. And kids, take notes because her career path is a great one to follow.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Books That Build Skills. If today's story sparked an idea, gave you courage, or helped you see what's possible, then we did our job. Remember, skills aren't born, they're built. One choice, one challenge, one brave step at a time. So hit subscribe, share this with someone who needs it, follow along, and keep exploring, building, reading, and dreaming big. I'm Loxley Brown. This is Books That Build Skills, and you're just getting started.